oh, I have to hop on that train. But let me tell you, I didn't hop off necessarily, but what I will tell you is that next time I'm taking the bus. Hey, welcome to my video. If you're from my Instagram, I love you, and if you're not from my Instagram, love you all the same. Welcome to Monthly Book Club, which is a series here on my channel where I tell you exactly what I read each month and exactly what I rated. Okay, a few disclaimers before we begin, as always. Number one, I am never here to bash books or authors. I am here to tell you my honest opinion about books that I read, but I feel like there is a way to do that without being mean. Being nasty is never my goal, so that's just not something that we're gonna do on this channel. And a part of the reason why I don't want to do that is because the reason that I might love a book might be the reason that you hate it, and vice versa. And you know what? Honestly, both of our opinions are valid, and that is that. And number three, I'm gonna pop some pictures on the screen up for you so that you can kind of get an idea of why I'm rating things the way that I am rating them and kind of understand my baseline a little bit. But obviously this is all subject to change and vibes, my mood, the moon, who knows what else. But if that's the case, I kind of can clock my own tea, and I normally tell you about it. But yeah, now with all of that out of the way, let's begin. So we have a lot to go over today, and although I'm here to yap, I hope I'm not gonna yap that much. Meanwhile, watch, this is gonna be like a 30-minute video, girl. But anyways, you get what you get, okay? Not the point, I'm already yapping too much. Anyway, to start it off, I owe you, because last month I told you that I was going to be reading some more holiday romances, and that's obviously what I did. And so now I owe you reviews on those, even though it's like January and it's like, do you care? Probably not, but like maybe you still like reading holiday romances in January or February, even March. And if that's the case, who am I to judge you? So let me tell you the tea. Starting off with Big Nick energy. And first of all, tropes. So this is a new adult, contemporary, and holiday romance, obviously. And it is about Shay and Connor. Now they match on a dating app, go out like a few times, and they discover that they're better off as friends. And Connor is described as a closest to a best friend that Shay has. So he insists that Shay and her daughters come to his dad's Christmas tree farm to spend Thanksgiving there. And so she does, and when she gets there, she meets the dad, who immediately gets enamored with her and sort of accidentally tells her girls about Elf on a Shelf, which she is not grateful for, by the way, because she just is way too overwhelmed to have to deal with that. And so to make it up to her, Nick, the dad, drives about 2 hours to her place every night just to deliver the elf and then move him about and overall just try and spread holiday cheer. Now from this point on, you should fill in your own blanks, or rather the blanks can fill themselves in, honey, because you already know what happens. So for me, this was a 3-star read and a 2 chili pepper. I did really overall enjoy this because it was cozy and Christmassy. It did give me the right vibes. It was the type of thing that I was looking for, and I did also like both of the main characters, and there is no third act breakup or miscommunication, which in my book is always a win, because as the great Miss Alyssa Edwards says, I don't entertain drama, confusion, chaos, and madness. So when it comes to a third act breakup, like, I can read about it, but I prefer not to. But yeah, as I was saying, overall this is a good read. It does get a little bit repetitive at around 80%, mostly in the dynamic between Nick and Shay, because it's this sort of vicious cycle of Nick doing something for Shay, and then she tells him that she doesn't need him to do anything for her, and then he tells her that he knows that, but he wanted to do it for her. And by this point, that's happened around 18,000 times. And at a certain point, and that point was around 80%, like I said, I was just like, okay, I get the point. It became this sort of vicious cycle that got a little tired, in my opinion. I also don't quite understand what happened between Nick's son, Connor, and Shay, because like I said, they were sort of described to be really close friends. And then once the romance between Nick and Shay starts developing, it's almost like Connor practically disappears. Like their friendship is really not written about anymore. We don't really hear about him except in like flashbacks. And honestly, I kind of wish that that wasn't the case. Okay, now moving on to My December Darling, which I saw everybody on social media reading, so I was like, oh, I have to hop on that train. But let me tell you, I didn't hop off necessarily, but what I will tell you is that next time I'm taking the bus, I don't even know if that like analogy makes sense at all, but I guess it sounded better in my head. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is that for me, this is a 2-star read and a 1 chili pepper. So this is a contemporary holiday novella. Now let me tell you a little bit about it. It's about Catalina and Luke who have to get along because they're in the same wedding together. And the wedding is of Luke's best friend and Catalina's sister. Now the twist here is that the best friend, who is now gonna marry the sister, was at some point also Catalina's ex, but that's okay because it wasn't too serious of a relationship. So when it came to playing nice with him, Catalina could manage that, right? But playing nice with Luke was a different story entirely. They really honestly avoided each other's company, but obviously once they started, because of the wedding, giving each other a chance, they realized that they may like each other more than they thought. So famously on this channel, I have said before that novellas aren't really my thing because I realize that they're supposed to be short and snappy, but somehow certain ones that I've read, because of the way that they're written, feel entirely too short, but not in a length of the book type of way, more in a, oh, none of this really makes sense in my head type of way. Because there's so much backstory missing that I simply fail to get into it. In this novella though, I thought that that was not an issue, and as a novella, it was really well written and I really respect that. However, the 2-star rating is not great, but let me tell you why I gave it that, okay? Their first date is at around 55% of the book, and up until then, there really wasn't much chemistry or romance in my opinion, and there was entirely way too much push and pull between the main characters, but not in like a fun, flirty way, because at that point, again, nothing romantic really happened yet. So I was kind of stressed about that, and also based on the book cover, and I know you're not supposed to judge a book on its cover, but honestly, based on the cover, I thought that it was gonna be way more Christmassy than it actually was. So that's another aspect that I didn't like. However, some users on Goodreads literally say that that's one of their favorite parts of this novella. And now we're moving on to the last full review of the video. This is a series. We're gonna be talking about assistant and apprentice to the villain. So I'm gonna be giving you a little synopsis of these books together, just because I really don't want to spoil book number 2 for you, but I am going to be rating them separately. So the tropes are, I guess you could call this a workplace romance, but obviously it is also a fantasy novel, and you know how I love my fantasy, okay? And it is about Evie, who loses her job and is kind of desperate, doesn't know what to do. So she has a sort of run-in, shall we say, with the really infamous villain, and he tells her that he's looking for an assistant, and obviously she jumps at the opportunity. Now she's great at what she does, except for one thing that could be considered unprofessional, and that is that she has a crush on her hot villainous boss. Lucky for her, he has a crush on her too. However, the plot twist here is that somebody is trying to take him and his empire out, and now Evie has to also figure out the mystery surrounding that. So let's first talk about book number 1. For me, this was 4 stars, and it is also 0 chili peppers. The banter between the main characters is actually really funny, and I did enjoy it quite a lot. They're both very like dramatic and theatrical, also very sarcastic in their own right, and so that made me love their chemistry. It's also very exciting. I love the main female character's arc, which I won't spoil for you here, but I just love it. The one thing that I do wish for here is that there was more romance between the main characters. Now, I'm not necessarily saying smut, although I do like smut, but what I mean here is mostly just romance, maybe kissing, I don't know, hand holding, even more hugging, anything. I wish that there was more of it all, basically. As far as book number 2 goes, for me, it's 3 stars, and again, 0 chili peppers. So this had an interesting storyline and cool twists yet again, just like book 1, and there definitely were more romantic moments between the main characters here than there were in the previous book, but ultimately I was still kind of left unsatisfied because they still really didn't become a couple or anything really close to that. I think he like touches her thigh once and they make out, but that's about it. Now, I will say book 3 of the series is coming out at some point this year, and I will read it and I will report back because overall I do really like the story. I just, for my own personal taste, wish that there was more romance. Okay guys, so now that we're finished, it's time for our rapid fire reviews, in which I basically just give you my rating and I explain minimally and we leave it as is unless you want me to talk about a specific book in more detail at some point later on in the future. Otherwise, it is what it is and you get what you get. Okay, here we go. So first up, The Striker. Honestly, 3 stars, 2 chili peppers. Overall, I was rooting for the couple and thought they had good chemistry. There were definitely some cute cameos from the Aniverse, I guess I could say. I did skim a little bit at around like 80% up until the end because it did get a little bit one-dimensional there, but overall I did like it. The Heiress and the Orc, 1 star and God knows how many chili peppers because I DNF'd it at 50%. Honestly, it had some cool plot points, and based on some of the spoilers that I read after I DNF'd it, there were definitely some cool twists in there. However, I can't really get into the couple's dynamic because it's so hot and cold and she's sort of obsessed with being a proper lady and he's sort of obsessed with bossing her around and sort of ordering her to speak up. And I don't know, it wasn't the dynamic for me, so I thought, let me not force it and DNF'd it. Chasing the Wild, for me, 4 stars, 2 chili peppers. Fun premise and good chemistry between the main characters. I only wish that there was more substance to the story because after they get together, the storyline gets kind of stagnant in my opinion. So, that's that for this video. If you made it this far, you are a magical, wonderful unicorn, and thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please consider liking, subscribing, maybe even commenting, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!